11 at night. A spare bedroom in Manchester. 2 monitors, a cold mug of tea, and a Shopify tab reading £4,100. He's told 4 people that number today. He did £4,100 in revenue. He didn't make £4,100. His ads aren't broken either. They're running at a 1.9 return, and 1.9 sits almost exactly on the median return across e-commerce on Meta. That median is why his account is draining while his dashboard looks like a win. The store isn't failing. It's doing precisely what the arithmetic says it should do. What did you think one customer cost you before you ever sat down and worked it out? Put the number you guessed in the comments. This is what Marco Scales pulls apart. Subscribe so you catch the next one. Your customer acquisition cost is everything you spend to get one new buyer through the door. Ad spend, obviously. Also, the creative that was paid for and never ran. App subscriptions. The affiliate commission nobody booked. Agency retainer. £200 of testing that taught nobody anything. Most sellers count the first item on that list and skip the rest. That's pricing a car by what you spent on petrol. My name's Marco. I've been buying traffic for e-commerce brands since 2017. I've helped scale over 40 stores, and I've pushed more than $30 million through my clients' checkouts. I'm telling you that so you know where the numbers in this video come from, and because I spend far too much of my life reading other people's profit and loss statements. I'm also telling you it's a revenue figure. By the end of this, you'll understand why that makes it close to worthless, and why I'd be a hypocrite to lead with it and stop there. If you've ever stared at a dashboard telling you you're winning and a bank balance telling you you're not, this is the video that closes that gap. 2026 compilation put it bluntly. 68% of direct-to-consumer brands undercount their own acquisition cost by 20 to 40%. I couldn't trace that back to an original study, so treat it as direction rather than gospel. What it points at is real, and you can watch it happen in any seller forum on any day. Now for the part that should worry you more than the undercounting. Nobody agrees what the number even is. Shopify's own guidance puts direct-to-consumer acquisition between $45 and $70. First Page Sage says 64. Digital Applied puts the median at 87 with the top quarter spending 42. TalkShop isolates paid only at 68 to 84. Retail averaged 226 in 2024. 8x give a range of 53 to 377 depending on category. Those aren't small disagreements. That's a spread of 8 to 1 on the single number deciding whether your business lives. Somewhere right now there's a founder who read the $45 figure and a founder who read the $377 figure, and they're launching into the same category this month, and only one of them is going to be surprised. Everyone's measuring something different. Blended acquisition quietly folds in the customers who arrived free through search or word of mouth. Others count paid only, or per order rather than per customer, or forget to subtract returns, which matters enormously when your apparel line runs 18 to 28%. An entire teaching economy grew up around this business model without ever agreeing on a definition of its core metric. That's the part I can't get past. I've read a couple of dozen of these benchmark reports this year and never once found 2 that define the term the same way. They're all technically correct and practically useless. The only number that governs your business is the one your own bank statement gives you. The direction of travel isn't in dispute though, and you should see the whole run. Back in 2013, buying an e-commerce customer cost about $9. By 2022, it was $29. Foundry CRO tracks direct-to-consumer acquisition tripling from roughly $24 in 2015 to somewhere near $80 today. Several sources put the climb at about 60% in the last 5 years alone, with the sharpest jump landing between 2023 and 2025. Every one of those increases happened while the advice being sold about this business model stayed exactly the same. Acquisition has tripled since 2015. The courses teaching it haven't changed a slide. Here's the figure that shows what it does to a young store. If you're under $1 million in revenue, you'll typically spend 25 to 35% of it on advertising just to find traction. Mature brands above $50 million spend 7 to 15. 8x found 59% of e-commerce companies now spending over 30% of revenue on ads, and most of them are either unprofitable or burning runway while they do it. So you pay the highest rate at the exact moment you can least afford it. Let's build your number from the bottom instead of borrowing somebody else's. Triple Whale tracks about 35,000 brands. Their 2025 median cost per 1,000 impressions on Meta was $13.48, up 20% in a year. Median conversion rate on those ads, 1.57%. Median cost per acquisition, $38.17. Median return on ad spend, 1.93. Little Data's benchmark across 2,800 Shopify stores puts average site conversion at 1.4%. Paid social converts worse than any other source you've got, somewhere between 0.7 and 1.2%. Small stores run gross margins around 30%. Payment processing, fraud tools, and chargeback reserve take another 2.5 to 3.5% of gross before a single product ships. Run a $38 acquisition cost against a 30% margin, and your order needs to clear 126 pounds just to break even on the first sale. Yours probably doesn't come close. Which is why GrowSurf's number lands the way it does. The average e-commerce brand loses $29 on every new customer it buys. Not the bad ones, the average one. There's a word for buying something for more than you can sell it for, and it isn't scaling. The man in Manchester isn't failing at e-commerce. He's succeeding at it, in the only way it currently works, and his dashboard has no column for that. He thinks the fix is better creative, sharper targeting, a different product. None of those touch the thing actually setting his price. Because the auction he's bidding in was never a fight between him and the other stores selling what he sells. Meta's auction doesn't sell impressions to whoever pays most. It ranks every eligible ad by what the company calls total value, and total value is your bid multiplied by the estimated action rate, adjusted for ad quality. That estimated action rate is a prediction, made per person, per auction, of how likely that specific human is to do the specific thing you asked for. Bid $5 with a 3% predicted conversion rate and strong creative, and you'll regularly beat somebody bidding $15 with a 0.8% rate and weak relevance. Then you only pay enough to beat the second highest total value, not your own maximum. That's a second price auction. Your bid is a ceiling, not a price. Meta isn't so much running an auction as a popularity contest with an invoice attached. Here's the structural fact underneath all of it, and it's the one that reframes everything you think you know. Search is demand-driven. Somebody types a query, and the platform hands them to you. Meta is supply-driven. It holds a finite pool of human attention and shares it out among everyone bidding. You're not competing with the other candle brands, you're competing with everybody who wants 12 seconds of the same person's evening. In April 2021, Apple shipped iOS 14.5 and made every app ask permission before tracking users elsewhere. Global opt-ins settled between 15 and 25%. Meta told investors the change would cost about $10 billion in 2022 sales. David Wayner, their chief financial officer at the time, called it more disruptive than they'd anticipated. For you, the damage was never Meta's lost revenue. It was your lost signal. Mike Woosley, then chief operating officer at Temu, spelled out the mechanics. Once the platform can't tell who's who, reaching 1,000 of the right people means showing your ad to 2,000. His summary was that acquisition costs doubled and half the yield vanished. 5 years on, some advertisers still see only 40 to 60% of their real conversions in platform reporting. Aggregated event measurement caps every domain at 8 conversion events and reports only the highest priority one. iOS reporting can lag 2 days. So the number on your screen isn't the number in your bank, and the gap between them won't hold still long enough for you to correct it by feel. You're driving on a speedometer that guesses and updates the day after tomorrow. Then the auction filled up with people who are nothing like you. In the first quarter of 2024, Temu spent $46 million on paid social. 98% of it went to Facebook. One company, one quarter, one platform. On Google Shopping, Temu and Shein have been estimated at $10 to $15 million a day between them. Novadata tracked what happened when Temu pulled its Google Shopping ads for 12 days after a tariff surcharge. Home decor cost per click dropped 35% overnight. When Temu came back, prices spiked past where they'd started. DAC Group found Temu's impression share swinging between 2 and 18% week to week through the first quarter of 2026. Sit with that. Your cost per customer moved by a third twice and nothing in your account changed. No creative fatigue. No targeting mistake. A company in another country adjusted its budget because of a customs rule. Which bothers you more? That one advertiser can move your costs by a third overnight, or that you'd have spent that fortnight blaming your own creative? Dwayne Brown, who runs the performance shop Take Some Risk, makes the point that even sellers who never see Temu in their auction feel it, because everybody's fighting over fewer consumer dollars. And when the giant leaves, your prices don't cleanly reset. DAX 2026 analysis found demand gets replaced fast, and delivery systems take time to settle. The floor rises and mostly stays risen. So your first customer loses money, and what that customer costs you is set by forces you can't see and can't influence, which leaves the only question that matters. If the first order loses money, where does a profitable store make it? Your second order. Every time. Without exception. Digital Applied's 2026 cohort data puts e-commerce repeat purchase at 52% by month 3 and 28% by month 12. Those curves fall faster than almost anybody models them. Bain's retention research finds a 5% improvement in repeat purchase produces between a 25 and a 95% improvement in profitability. Payback period governs all of it. Food and beverage brands get their acquisition cost back in 1 to 3 months. Beauty and pet in 2 to 4. Supplements and fashion in 3 to 6. Electronics can take a year or more, which is why a gadget store at month 11 is the healthiest looking corpse in e-commerce. Notice what that does to you if you're planning a one-off novelty product. There's no second order in that model. Your whole business has to clear on the first sale, at a $38 acquisition cost and a 30% margin, and that arithmetic simply doesn't close. If you want the proof at scale, it's public, and it's brutal. Allbirds went public in November 2021. The Wool Runner brand raised $301 million and closed its first day near a $4.1 billion valuation. Obama wore the shoes. The business press called it the model direct-to-consumer company. Its own IPO filing said the company had incurred significant net losses since inception and expected to keep incurring them. The record after that: $46.7 million lost in 2021. On $277.5 million of revenue. $101.4 million lost in 2022. $152.5 million in 2023. $93.3 million in 2024. $77.3 million in 2025. On revenue that had fallen to $152.5 million. Not one profitable quarter in its whole public life. The detail that tells you the real story is the marketing line. Allbirds spent 19.3% of revenue on marketing in 2023 and 21.9% in 2024, while revenue fell from $254 million to $190 million. Their absolute spend went down. The ratio went up. It's the ratio that kills you. In March 2026, they agreed to sell their assets and intellectual property to American Exchange Group for $39 million, under 1% of peak value. Days earlier, the board approved $900,000 in retention payments to the chief executive and chief financial officer to oversee the wind-down. The retail analyst Neil Saunders described what was left as an ex-parrot being sold for a paltry $39 million. A company with $301 million of capital, a globally recognized brand, and 5 years to work it out, couldn't beat its own acquisition cost. That's what the arithmetic does at scale when nobody prices it properly at the start. Now the honest part, because this doesn't resolve cleanly and I'm not going to pretend it does, there's a serious argument that your problem is measurement, not structure. Digital Applied shows the top quarter buying customers at $42 against an $87 median and puts the gap down to server-side tracking rather than lower bids. Meta's own figures show cost per thousand impressions rising 20% in 2025, while cost per acquisition rose 1%, which means somebody absorbed the whole increase through better creative. Read it that way and the arithmetic isn't fixed. It's a skill gap, and it's yours to close. The counter-argument is everything you've just watched. Acquisition is up roughly 60% in 5 years. The signal that made targeting work broke in 2021 and never came back. Median gross margin sits near 30%. Repeat purchase falls to 28% inside a year. And half of all Shopify stores turn over less than $24,000 a year. I don't think that question's settled, and anybody telling you it is has something to sell you. What is settled is smaller and much harder to argue with. Every store that survives knows its own number. Every store that dies was working from somebody else's. Nobody's going to hand you yours. Shopify doesn't publish merchant survival data. Meta reports a figure missing up to 60% of your conversions. And the people teaching you this model built their audiences on revenue screenshots because revenue survives contact with a thumbnail and margin doesn't. The man in that spare bedroom in Manchester will find his number eventually. Most people find it about 4 months after they needed it. Somewhere around the evening, the card gets declined. Most of you watching will agree with every figure in this video and launch anyway. Your CAC won't care. Once you start reading businesses this way, you can't unsee it, and half the success stories in this industry start looking like accounting choices somebody made on your behalf. That's what Marco Scales does with every one of these. Subscribe and the next one finds you.